The day my millionaire family stole my life, I burned their empire to the ground. The coldness of the stone steps did not merely seep through the thin, frayed fabric of my worn trousers. It invaded my very bones, an icy, paralyzing venom that seemed to freeze the marrow and halt the blood in my veins. The massive wooden doors of the orphanage slammed shut behind me, and I remember the exact, world-shattering sound it made, a hollow, resonant, and final thud that vibrated through the cracked leather soles of my oversized shoes, traveling up my spine like a physical blow from an iron club. The air in that exact millisecond smelled overwhelmingly of damp, rotting earth, stale boiled cabbage that had been left to fester in massive metal vats, and the sharp, acidic, metallic tang of an impending thunderstorm. I was only 7 years old, a tiny, fragile, discarded human being. But the physical and psychological weight of that sudden silence was denser and more oppressive than anything my young mind had ever known to exist. My breathing instantly became shallow and jagged, each desperate inhale scraping against the sensitive lining of my throat like a handful of crushed glass tearing through soft tissue. I stood there, frozen in space and time, a statue carved from pure terror, my small, trembling, dirt-stained fingers clenching the rough fabric of my single spare shirt so tightly that my knuckles turned a sickly shade of translucent white. I tried, with every ounce of my rapidly depleting willpower, to speak, to scream, to call out to the retreating, rhythmic, clicking footsteps of the woman who had birthed me, the woman who was currently walking away from my existence forever. But the words caught in my throat, tangled, twisted, and strangled in the familiar, suffocating knot of my severe stutter. The silence stretched outwards, thick and viscous, wrapping around my trembling body like a leaden, impenetrable burial shroud. I could hear my own heart hammering a frantic, erratic rhythm against my fragile ribcage, a chaotic drumming that echoed the dread pooling and swirling like toxic sludge in the very pit of my empty stomach. The nuns, spectral figures draped in severe black fabric, stared down at me from the encroaching shadows of the archway, their pale, pinched expressions unreadable masks of cold pity and stern, unyielding discipline. Every microscopic twitch on their weathered faces seemed to project a silent scream into my mind, reinforcing the horrifying reality that I was nothing more than a burdensome, broken, defective thing left carelessly on their doorstep like a sack of unwanted garbage. The sheer psychological agony of that specific moment fractured something foundational inside my developing mind, splintering my entire sense of self, my identity, and my worth into 1,000 jagged pieces that scattered into the darkest corners of my consciousness. I spent the next 10 grueling, excruciatingly slow years drowning continuously in that same oppressive silence. Every time I attempted to force a word out of my mouth, every time I tried to simply assert my own existence, the stutter would seize my tongue, paralyzing my vocal cords, restricting my airways, and turning my internal thoughts into a humiliating, public spectacle of physical struggle and grotesque facial contortions. The other children, cruel and hardened by their own abandonment, mocked me relentlessly, their high-pitched laughter a constant, grating noise that scraped against my raw nerves like rusty sandpaper on an open wound. I was systematically trained by my own trauma to swallow my words, to bury my voice, my opinions, my pain, and my entire personality beneath thick, impenetrable layers of profound isolation. The sensory deprivation of my forced, internal silence relentlessly pushed my fragile psyche to the absolute brink of madness. I would lie awake night after night in the cavernous, freezing dormitory, my eyes wide open in the darkness, intensely listening to the rhythmic, collective breathing of 30 other abandoned children, feeling so completely and terrifyingly alone in the vast universe that I thought my chest would literally cave in from the atmospheric pressure of my own loneliness. Cold, clammy sweat would begin to pool at the base of my neck, trickling slowly down my spine as the severe panic attacks rolled over me. Wave after devastating wave of paralyzing, irrational fear that gripped my lungs and squeezed until black spots danced in my vision. I spent thousands of hours meticulously memorizing the spiderweb cracks in the peeling plaster ceiling above my lumpy cot, studying the shifting, melancholy shade of pale gray the moonlight painted across the warped floorboards, and inhaling the permanent, depressing smell of ancient dust, harsh lye soap, and lingering despair. It was an existence defined entirely by absence, an endless, repetitive loop of unexpressed thoughts, stifled emotions, and a deep, gnawing hunger for a connection I was biologically incapable of asking for. Then, finally, came the chaotic, beautiful night of the great storm. The wind howled furiously against the fragile window panes of the dormitory, monstrous roar that masked the desperate sound of my own panicked breathing as I silently, painstakingly slipped out the back door and into the abyss of the night. The torrential, freezing rain instantly soaked through my thin clothes, pasting them to my shivering skin, while the thick mud sucked greedily at my boots, cold, merciless, and heavy, trying with all its earthy might to drag me backward, to pull me back into the prison of my youth. Every muscle, tendon, and fiber in my emaciated body burned with a searing ache with the sheer effort of simply putting one foot in front of the other, fighting against the elements and my own profound physical weakness. The rain lashed at my face, stinging my freezing skin like thousands of tiny needles. But the localized pain was a desperately welcome distraction from the crushing psychological torment of my daring escape. I walked blindly for what felt like an eternity, driven forward not by hope, but by a primal, animalistic need to find a place where my silence was not constantly used as a weapon against my own sanity. The gnawing hunger in my stomach twisted like a living, angry serpent, a hollow, deep ache that made my vision blur at the edges and caused my hands to shake uncontrollably. I stumbled blindly, relentlessly, pushing through dense forests and crossing desolate highways, eventually finding myself in the deep, overgrown, untamed South, a mysterious, ancient land of towering, moss-draped forests and relentless humidity, where the thick air smelled constantly of wet, decaying pine needles, rich soil, and distant, sweet wood smoke. That was where I finally found her, the woman who would alter the trajectory of my shattered existence. The Blind Weaver. Her small wooden cabin was a strange sanctuary of intense texture and rhythmic, hypnotic sound, filled to the brim with the constant clacking of the massive loom and the soft, lanolin-rich scent of raw, unprocessed wool. When she finally reached out and touched my face, her calloused, sensitive fingertips meticulously mapping the sharp, hollow contours of my extreme exhaustion and deep, ingrained trauma, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace wash over my panicked mind. She did not need my broken, useless words. She completely bypassed my vocal cords and taught me, with infinite, silent patience, to speak with my hands. The massive, complex wooden loom instantly became my true voice, an infinitely expressive language of physical tension, vibrant color, and intricate, mathematical pattern. I would sit for grueling hours on the hard wooden bench, my fingers flying rapidly across the tightly strung warp and weft, pouring every ounce of my suppressed agony, my deeply buried dreams, and my traumatic isolation into the very fabric of the cloth. The rough, abrasive, deeply comforting texture of the undyed coarse wool acted as a physical grounding wire, pulling me back from the edge of panic, while the vibrant hues of the natural, hand-mixed dyes finally gave vivid color to my silent, internal screams. I meticulously wove the cold memory of those stone steps into the borders. I wove the stifling silence of the dark orphanage into the tight, restrictive weave, and I wove the stinging, freezing rain of my desperate escape into the loose, flowing tassels. I wove my entire shattered soul into those heavy garments, creating pieces that were breathtakingly, hauntingly beautiful and heavy with raw, unfiltered human emotion. I was happy, truly and profoundly, for the first time in my existence, living a modest, rhythmic life entirely disconnected from the cruelty, the noise, and the expectations of the world that had so easily discarded me. But the universe has a sick, twisted sense of humor. Years later, when I was fully grown and entrenched in my peaceful routine, a wealthy, arrogant tourist, a woman draped in expensive, cloying perfumes and radiating an insufferable arrogance, stumbled casually into our small village market. I watched her from the shadows of my stall, my heart rate remaining steady, completely unaware of the impending devastation. I watched closely as her perfectly manicured, soft, unworked hands traced the intricate patterns of my absolute most prized, personal piece. A heavy shawl that literally contained the very woven essence of my childhood trauma and recovery. Her eyes suddenly widened, a flash of ravenous greed and predatory calculation flashing across her perfectly preserved face. She bought the shawl without a second thought for a tiny fraction of its true, incalculable emotional worth, leaving behind a crisp, meaningless banknote and a nauseating cloud of floral scent that made my stomach churn and my throat tighten. I thought nothing of it at the time, retreating quickly back into the safety and comfort of my quiet, wool-scented world. I did not know, could not have possibly fathomed, that she was the ruthless owner and CEO of a global luxury fashion empire. I did not know that she was the exact same woman who had birthed me. I did not know she was my mother. The devastating revelation came months later, a catastrophic shock that tore through the delicate piece I had painstakingly built over a decade. I was sitting quietly in the local, dimly lit tavern, sipping a cup of bitter chamomile tea, when the old, static-filled television in the corner suddenly broadcasted a high-profile fashion show live from Paris. The flickering screen was filled with blinding strobe lights, gaudy, soulless electronic music, and impossibly thin models strutting down the runway wearing exact, soulless copies of my deeply personal, agonizingly created designs. My heart literally stopped beating for a full, terrifying second. The blood instantly rushed to my head, a roaring sound of a waterfall that drowned out every other noise in the crowded room. My hands began to shake uncontrollably, the cheap ceramic teacup rattling against the sticky table, spilling the hot liquid over my knuckles, though I felt no physical pain. The designs on the screen were cynically altered, sanitized for the wealthy masses, but the core patterns, my deep pain, my agonizing story, were plastered shamelessly across the bodies of the ultra-rich, paraded as meaningless aesthetic. And then, the ultimate blow was delivered. The lead designer walked out onto the runway to take her arrogant, triumphant bow. The woman from the village market. The woman whose face, blown up on the television screen, was an older, sharper, more ruthless mirror image of my own. The woman who had left me to freeze and rot on those stone steps 20 years ago. The betrayal was not emotional. It was a severe, acute physical agony, a sharp, twisting knife thrust into my gut, making me double over in my chair in gasping, suffocating pain. She had not just abandoned my body to suffer. She had somehow returned, like a parasite, to steal my soul, to commodify my darkest trauma and mass-produce it, selling my pain to the highest bidder. The sheer audacity, the sickening cruelty of her actions, threatened to shatter my fragile sanity, plunging me back into the dark abyss of my childhood. I spent 3 full days locked inside my small cabin, completely paralyzed, staring blankly at the rough wooden wall, the silence around me turning toxic and stifling once more. But then, the initial shock began to curdle. The paralyzing grief slowly morphed into a living, breathing entity inside my chest. It was a searing fire of pure rage that burned away every ounce of my residual fear and hesitation, replacing it with a cold, absolute resolve. I could have easily sued her. I possessed all the original sketches, the raw materials, the sworn testimony of the entire village who had watched me weave those patterns for years. I could have dragged her pristine name through the mud of public opinion, legally claimed my massive inheritance, and watched her beloved empire crumble under the weight of a multi-million-dollar, highly publicized lawsuit. I could have taken her vast wealth and lived like a queen for the rest of my days. But the mere thought of touching her money, of letting her blood-stained, trauma-soaked wealth dictate my future, made me physically nauseous. I did not want a single cent of her money. I wanted her to feel the exact, hollow, suffocating emptiness she had so casually inflicted upon me. I wanted to destroy the very concept she valued most in the world, not with highly paid lawyers and sterile courtrooms, but with the exact same weapon she had stolen from my bleeding hands. I meticulously set up a cheap, low-resolution digital camera in the darkest corner of my dusty workshop. The lighting was terrible, casting harsh shadows, and the sound quality was awful, but the underlying message was going to be crystal, devastatingly clear. For the first time in my adult life, I forced myself to speak aloud to the world. The physical effort required to push the air past my vocal cords was immense. My voice was rusty, harsh, and brutally broken by the severe stutter, but I stubbornly refused to let it stop me. I poured every ounce of my burning willpower, my rage, and my trauma into forming every excruciating syllable. I did not talk about the personal betrayal. I did not shed a single tear. I did not mention her name or our biological connection. I simply, coldly, and methodically taught. I mathematically broke down the intricate, complex techniques of my personal weaving style, step by painstaking step. I thoroughly explained the deep emotional resonance of the specific geometric patterns, the exact precision required for the loom's tension, the closely guarded, ancient secrets of mixing the natural dyes to achieve those specific, impossible colors. I willingly, deliberately gave away the very soul of the expensive designs completely for free, stripping them of their manufactured exclusivity, their fake luxury status, and their entirely artificial monetary value. I uploaded the long, stuttering, detailed tutorial videos to every accessible corner of the internet. An anonymous rural artisan systematically giving away multi-million-dollar corporate secrets to anyone with an internet connection and a desire to learn. The videos went viral almost instantly, gaining traction and snowballing into a massive, unstoppable wave of digital rebellion and anti-corporate sentiment. Thousands upon thousands of local artisans, casual hobbyists, and students across the globe began replicating the exact designs, flooding the global market with high-quality, handmade, truly authentic versions of the luxury brand's highly anticipated flagship collection. The tension of sitting in my cabin, waiting for the inevitable fallout, was excruciating, a constant, high-pitched ringing in my ears. Every time I dared to check the internet, my heart would pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs, my palms slick with cold sweat, my breath catching in my throat. I watched with cold, detached fascination as the luxury brand's stock predictably plummeted, their exclusive image shattered overnight by the sudden ubiquity of their supposedly unique designs. The wealthy elite, terrified of looking common, instantly abandoned the collection, disgusted by its sudden accessibility to the working class. My mother's sprawling empire, built entirely on exploitation and the theft of stolen souls, began to rapidly hemorrhage money, investors fleeing like rats from a sinking, burning ship. I obsessively watched her increasingly frantic press conferences on the tiny screen, analyzing every forced expression, every barely noticeable tremor in her usually commanding voice, every tiny drop of terrified sweat that gathered on her forehead. The arrogant, untouchable facade was cracking, revealed as a desperate, hollow woman underneath the expensive clothes. The absolute silence that followed her complete public and financial ruin was, without a doubt, the most profoundly beautiful, harmonious sound I had ever experienced. I did not gloat online. I did not send a message. I did not ever reveal my identity or my relation to her. I simply, quietly closed the lid of my cheap laptop, walked back to my massive wooden loom, and gently picked up the raw threads. The rough texture of the wool against my calloused fingers, the sharp, clean smell of the damp earth outside the window, the rhythmic, steady clacking of the wood as I began a new piece. I was finally, completely whole. I was free from the ghost of my past. I had successfully burned her entire world, her legacy, and her pride to the ground without ever lifting a single finger in physical violence, without taking a single cent of her money. I consciously chose the mud, the rain, the hard work, and the beautiful silence. And in that silence, sitting alone in my cabin, I found a deep power she could never understand, a peace she could never afford to buy, and a revenge so mathematically perfect that it would echo through the hollow halls of her ruined life